could you provide for us or give us an idea of an update on the Hizma checkpoint incident and also its implications for occupied Jerusalem?
Well, indeed. First of all, thanks for having me, Mark, again. But again, this is an indication of the escalating tension within the occupied Palestinian territories, and the fact that the massacres that are taking place in Gaza and elsewhere in the West Bank is basically creating a state of anger all over the occupied Palestinian territories. And it proves once again that even if Israel is able to conduct wide-scale military operations, basically destroying all of Gaza, you will not be able to prevent single Palestinians, as we've seen before over the years, not just over the past year, but increasingly over the past year, single Palestinians conducting, attacks against Israeli soldiers or whatever targets they can get hold of, because of the continuation of the daily massacres that are being committed against Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, again, what's happening in Gaza is basically incredible. I mean, it just goes beyond any worst imaginations, even of the best producers of horror movies. I mean, the fact that they are surrounding and sieging the Kamal Adwan hospital in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza for days, preventing the patients inside from getting any aid, preventing or cutting electricity, and asking people to evacuate people in very critical conditions, asking them to evacuate from that part. At the same time, similar operations are being conducted in Middle Gaza and in Rafah and Southern Gaza. So, I mean, at the time, the Israelis are claiming that they are close to an agreement with the Hamas through the mediation of Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. We're seeing this massive escalation of violence and crimes against the Palestinians, resulting in the death of nearly an average of 50 to 100 Palestinians a day. So, I mean, and again, this is happening at a time when we're seeing a lot of volatility in the region. Of course, there's a lot of concern about the developments in Syria. Lots of coverage of that story. So people are dealing with, or the international community, unfortunately, is dealing with those daily massacres in Gaza as if they're like a regular happening at a time. It's a very determined plan by the current right-wing Israeli government to try to force the Palestinians to flee their territories. We've heard from the Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, openly saying that he wants to reduce Gaza's population by almost half. So it's not just that the Israelis are taking revenge for the October 7 attacks 2023, but they are also intentionally trying to make Gaza a place where people cannot simply live. And even if the war stops, we'll find lots of people who are seeking to kind of move somewhere else so that they can enjoy the simplest meaning of being alive. So, I mean, again, it's all kind of happening at a very critical time in this region.
And you mentioned Kamal Adwan Hospital and the situation there. What could possibly be the thinking of attacking healthcare workers and patients and keeping them under siege like this?
Well, again, the entire purpose, Mark, behind these ongoing Israeli operations in northern Gaza is clearly to evacuate that part of Gaza and to create what they would call a buffer zone. I mean, as if previous buffer zones have managed to protect Israel. They're basically trying to confiscate another, like almost 1/3 of Gaza in order, which is basically what many people call the general's plan, to make life impossible for Palestinians in northern Gaza, destroy all the homes and the facilities that exist there, including, unfortunately, hospitals. And again, if there's a Guinness Book of Records and crimes against humanity by attacking hospitals, I'm sure Israel will get first rated in that kind of category because we haven't seen it before. I mean, in a country occupying another population, another nation, that they are intentionally depriving them even from the basic rights for health care, amid all this increasing numbers of wounded and dead that the Palestinians are receiving every day. So,
well, I wanted to ask you about that, actually.
As well as any other hospitals that exist in northern Gaza.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the situation on the ground there, Mr. Dawoud. What do you think the challenges are that are being faced by humanitarian aid organizations, especially when it comes to delivering supplies to Gaza?
Well, I was just reading, Mark, an article in the New York Times today, about the difficulties facing humanitarian organizations in delivering aid. Of course, the prime responsible party for all of this is Israel. That's maintaining very tight control, if not making it impossible for aid to be delivered. And the only kind of crossing point that where aid is being allowed to be delivered after Israel occupied Rafah along the border with Egypt and Gaza is now the Karam Shalom, or Kafr Salem as it's known in Arabic, crossing. And the convoys basically face a lawless situation in the southern Gaza as soon as they enter, which makes them subject to looting by basic gangs. At the end of the day, big part of the problem and the negotiations that are taking part right now, Israel's insistence that Hamas should not be in control of Gaza anymore. At the same time, they're also rejecting any other alternative, of course, stopped with the Palestinian Authority. So with no Hamas, no Palestinian authorities, it's basically becoming a lawless land where these gangs basically steal the aid that's being delivered to the Palestinians. And at the same time, the Israelis are not providing any protection for those aid convoys, although they are practically the occupation force inside those territories. So, with all the difficulties, limiting the number of trucks, limiting the kinds of goods that are being allowed into Gaza, at the same time, there is this state of vacuum in southern Gaza, all over Gaza, practically no government, no authority, no party to deal with in order to take responsibility for the distribution of aid. And on top of that, banning UNRWA, the UN organization, from carrying out its activity, which will definitely make matters much worse for Palestinians starting early next year.